it's a review of the tasks that you had from task 1 to task 4, which represents the first 3 weeks of your internal idea. So that's what we start with. I'd like to also see what you've done and, of course, benchmark it against the workbooks that defined what you were supposed to do so that we can see how you're doing, the challenges, and of course, what needs to be done. So that's how we will start. And then we'll move on to discuss what needs to be done by next week so that we have clarity of the next steps. Okay, so that's where we are. Before we start, I'll just explain an update on the project so that you have some sense of how it's evolving. All right, so those are the 3 parts to the meeting: an update, a review, and then of what's done, and then a discussion on what's to happen next. Those are the 3 parts. So it's not a long meeting, and on your part, you just need to be ready to show me what you've done so that we can have that as a part of the meeting. Okay, so in terms of updates, the first thing that's going on, just to let you understand, is how an animation starts as a project and how it progresses and how it concludes. So you're coming into this project at the starting of it. So you get a sense of how an animation starts and then progresses. If you stay with us till the end, you'll see how it goes up to the end. Okay, just to give you an example of how we go about it, but of course it's not perfect. But the way we go about it is that we get a job that comes in, and it starts with an expression of interest with the client. So the client can express their interest in various ways. I mean, sometimes they headhunt a company, so they come to us directly and ask us to give them a quotation, and we start the discussion straight away. Other times they put out a tender, we apply, and if we win, then of course that represents a starting point. They write to us and tell us to start. Other times it's based on, you can say, ongoing work that's happening that requires an input that's animated. And sometimes the animation input is extensive enough for us to get into this kind of production. So there are various ways in which we get the work. So when the work comes, we then organize it through a set of stages. There are actually 5 stages. So the very first stage for us is the ideation stage. And that's the stage we're in now. The ideation stage is where we do the story. First of all, the synopsis, which is a summary of the story. Then comes the story, and then comes the script. The synopsis has a specific job of interpreting the brief of the client. So the client writes to us and tells us, this is what we want based on a problem that we have. Okay. Now, they don't express themselves usually in a sufficient way. So we interpret what they write to us. So when they write whatever they write, we have a meeting on it, we discuss, then we interpret all that. And we write back to them to tell them, are you saying this? When we write to them, it's called an interpretation of the brief. Now, that interpretation of the brief for us is the starting point, because our interpretation of the brief converts what the client is saying into something that can be animated. It's a very important step, by the way. You know, the process we're going through is a process that we go through in Kenya, East Africa, even Africa. It's not a process that necessarily applies itself to Japan or Europe or even, let's say, America. It's unique to our condition and situation. So clients can brief you, but the briefing is not reflecting anything that we can work with. So there's many gaps, many holes. So we have to close those gaps and the holes by interpreting the brief. And when we do that, now we have something. Now we're speaking in a way that we can talk to the crew, the animation crew, and they can now go into production. So that interpretation of the brief is what I shared with you, so that you kind of see that, yeah, this is now something that makes some sense. Okay, from there we move into the synopsis writing. So the synopsis now takes the message of the client and uses a device, a story, to make their message understandable to a target audience. From the brief, we know what the message is. We also know the target audience from the brief. especially from the interpretation of the brief. We have those. So we now target the target audience. That's the persona of the client. And the persona may be stratified. It usually is. You have the main persona, the primary ones. Then you have the secondary personas. And then you have, you can say, stakeholders who are not primary or secondary, but they're also in the game. So sometimes we have to target several of them. But that's fine. As long as we know that's the persona list, then we are aligned. So this exercise of ideation is one of planning, but the exercise of planning is one of constructive alignment, where we align the interests of the client with the interests of the viewers, especially with animation. So we have viewers who are going to take up the animation, and the client is interested in those viewers. So we align their interest with the viewers, let's say, appetite. The viewer has a need to watch the animation. That's the presumption. I mean, if the viewer didn't care about animation, then we're wasting our time. Of course, there's some interest in the animation. So we now align that interest in the viewer with our work or the animation with the client's interest, you can say, with now our own capabilities. That's what planning is about. So once we align that, we're okay. So when we write a synopsis, that synopsis is attempting to align these things. All right, so that's written, and I'm going to share with you again just so that we're clear. So we have that. Then we move into writing the story. Now, the synopsis, of course, it speaks to the audience, but it also speaks to the message of the client, and at the same time has a story in mind, which is the device it's going to use to communicate to the audience. So we have to write that story. So the next step is to write that story. Okay, so once we've written the story, we're fine. After writing that story, we evolve it into a script because you can't animate a story. A story has to be adapted to the screen. It has to, for example, have dialogue. It has to be represented in a series of shots so that we can translate it into a set of visuals, like the storyboard, But we don't translate a story to a storyboard. We translate a story into a script into a storyboard. So that's why ideation goes into storyboard writing. Now, into script writing, into story writing, and then into script writing. When we get into script writing, as you've seen, we have two types of scripts. And this is not so obvious to people somehow. But you have the scripts, let's say, that are written by filmmakers, which are well known because film is film and it's been around and it's more commonplace than animation. Film scripts are where animation scripts came from. We borrowed from the format of film, but the format of film is insufficient to inform an animator on what to do. So, what do? We convert the film script into something that is useful for animation purposes. Okay? But if you're a director of animation, you can write an animation script straight off from a story. You don't have to write a film script and then write an animation script. It's the filmmakers who write a film script and then the animators who come in and convert it into an animator script. The animator script is important because it saves a lot of time in storyboarding. If you don't write an animator script, then in the storyboarding, you have more work to do because we are frame accurate to begin with. So we want to know what frame is each panel starting and what frame is it ending. Not what second. What frame is it starting and what frame is it ending? So if you tell an animator starting on the first second and ending on the third second, and it's 24 frames a second, that's what we agree on. The animator knows that these are 72 frames. You see, we look at it in frames. So that's how that's one difference between an animator script and a film script. And the ideation process ends when we have what we call an animator script. Okay, so that's now where we are. I want us to finish the, animator's script this week so that the next week we're moving on to pre-production. Pre-production starts after ideation. It doesn't start during ideation. When we're doing all this storytelling and story narrative thing, that's not really an animator's skill. That's a skill that comes before we start animating. The animator's skills start after that. And even then, there are only 3 steps in ideation. But once you get into, let's say, 4 steps, if you're going to convert, let's say, a film script into an animator script, But if you're moving into animation, pre-production, those ones, there are at least 6 steps, could even be 7. Depends on how you decide to look at it. But let's say at least 6 steps for sure. Okay. And I want us to go through those steps. And you've already started. So step number 1 is the of course you've read the story and you've read the synopsis, you've read the script. So step number 1 becomes an analysis of the script. But what do we need from that analysis? We need you to determine how many characters there are. Okay. We need you to isolate the what we call primary characters from the secondary characters, from the featured characters. The secondary characters are like supporting actors, but the primary ones are the ones who talk the most. And while you can go with the talking, it's not a bad indicator of a primary character, how much dialogue they speak. The issue here is not so much the volume of speaking, it's more of how they influence the plot. If the plot is written well, then the people who speak the most actually are the ones who influence the plot the most. But it's not always the case. But that's not the thing. The thing is, we need to know the primary actors, the secondary actors, and the featured actors. Very important. Why do they matter? Well, the primary characters, first of all, when we do our stories, we go from emotional beat to emotional beat. So we try to identify emotional appeal across the story, right? And it needs to, first of all, be continuous, of course. I mean, you can't just throw emotions at people, you see. You have to be doing it in a certain way. So we have to identify these emotions and make sure that they make sense in a human way. So if someone is sad, there's a reason why they're sad. If they're sad because of some event that's happened, then prior to that, maybe they were shocked. And maybe prior to that, they were angry. There's a sense in which emotions tell their own story. So we have to arrange the story in a way that is intuitive to a normal human being. When they see everything happening, they can understand it and relate with it. So once we have that, then we now have our emotional beats, if you like. That's very good for storytelling because now we can put on that emotional beat line the main characters. The main characters are on that emotional beat line. The supporting characters are also on it, but the purpose of a supporting character is to bring out the main character. That's the purpose. And then the featured characters are just background. They're just there to make everything realistic, maybe, or to make everything believable, maybe, stuff like that. But they're not really on this emotional beat line, those featured characters. Okay? So when you're deciding who's a main character, you're answering the question, is this person instrumental in driving the story forward along these emotional beats? That's what you're asking. If the answer is yes, that's a main character. And the main character may not speak much, but they're on that emotional pathway. See, there's non-verbal communication in animation, and while the verbal is part of it, the non-verbal is also part of it. In fact, sometimes the non-verbal is more important. So you might find the main character is not speaking much, but they're on this emotional beat line. You need to identify that, right? That becomes a main character for us. Okay. So once we've done that, that's good because then you have a character list. Once you have your character list, there should be names assigned to each one of these characters. Even if they don't have, we give them names. Now we design them. Okay. Now, in an animation production pipeline like what we're doing now, designing a character is not just doing a nice drawing. This is not about art. And we should never think animation is about art. It's not. We have to draw an emotive character. We have to. So you can have a nice drawing, looks even real, maybe looks even perfect in the sense of illustration, but useless for animation. Absolutely useless. For animation, for a drawing to be useful, it needs to speak to the story. Number one, it must speak to the story. It's nothing more useless than a good drawing that doesn't speak to the story. It must. Okay? And then number two, it must be emotive. And the only alternative to emotive um, characterization is functional characterization. In other words, the character must be at least having some utility. Either if they're emotional, then that's useful. If they're functional, like they do something meaningful. Sometimes in an animation, we need to show someone doing something, like either you're joining dots, so you have to carry an item from here to there. So that's what they're doing. Nothing emotive about that. They're just carrying this item from here to there, or they're walking from point to point. Nothing emotive there, but they're walking. So that's functional utility. That's okay. That's useful. So either functional or emotional. Emotional being the one that drives the story. Okay. So when you're now designing the character, okay, this is key. You need to pick at least the three top emotions. I'm just working with the rule of three. Sometimes it can be six. It depends. I mean, sometimes you need more than that. You have to decide. But typically, it's sufficient to pick the top three emotions that this character experiences in the whole script. For example, if the antagonist or even protagonist is usually happy or usually singing or usually excited, pick those as three emotional attributes that you can see are prominent. You pick the three most prominent and then show them like that. Very important because that's what we mean by character development. Character development is visualizing the character in its part or in their role. Okay, so three is enough, and we call those that's the pose sheet. Now, three is not sufficient, let me tell you, for a full treatment of poses. It's not. And depending on the director of animation, they can tell you to even draw 3 pages and each page to have like 9 poses. So you have 3 times 9 poses in total for your pose sheet. Some directors are like that, like Disney do that. But I'm speaking again from the African context in the situation we find ourselves. Like now we're in production, time is of essence, and we have to get moving. Three is sufficient. If you do three, we can pass that by the client. Client doesn't even understand the three, let alone 9 or 27. We can't show them all that. So three is sufficient. We show them this is the character in action. This is how they would be excited. This is how they would be happy. This is how they would sing. And it's sufficient. Okay? Then we have what we call a character model sheet. The character model sheet can be shown to the client, but it's very important for the pipeline. It's important for the animators, the crew, so that when they ask the question, so where's this character? You don't explain it in words. You draw it in profile. So you draw the front view, the side view, the three-quarter view. So these two sheets represent what you can argue is the character profile. And you have to have a character profile for every character, even the featured characters. It's most important, of course, you have to have it for the main characters, even supporting. But for everyone, you have a character pose sheet and a character model sheet. Okay? Now, I'm speaking in many ways to the rules of animation. Animation, you learn the principles, okay? Principles are kind of sacrosanct, holy, almost scripture for animation. You learn that, okay? We're going to apply it. It's scripture, so we can't leave it out. But beyond the scripture come the rules. The rules are the means by which we implement the principles. Okay? And then we have the guidelines. The guidelines tell you how to work. They're about the method, the guidelines. Okay? Also important, equally. And then come the best practices. The best practices contextualize the guidelines. So if we're in Kenya here and we have to produce for this kind of client, and when you're working with a client, it's a design, you're using animation to implement a design, you can say, model. Like now we're implementing design thinking. Design thinking predicates on solving problems that by targeting audiences, by addressing their needs. That's design thinking. So we're using animation to do that. So if you're going to do that, then there's a context. That's where best practices come in. What we would do in Kenya based on our context. Okay, so we're doing that. So now we need to have the character models illustrated in character post sheets. No, these are the characters. So the character designs, we need them illustrated in character post sheets and model sheets. We need them illustrated in both. Okay? And you do it for the full range. In this animation, there are like 12 characters, if you take all of them. So per episode. So you want to illustrate all of them in post sheets and model sheets. That's step one. It's only step one. Then you move to step two. Step two, which is key, we need to make sure that we I would say record their voices. Would I say that? Let me say we do the storyboard. Step 2, we do the storyboard. Okay? That means you develop a short list. Now, when animators develop a short list, we don't develop a short list in writing. I mean, you can if you want. I mean, it's neither here nor there, but we don't ask for that written short list. Our short list is the storyboard. So when you show the panels are a series of shots, right? You break the animation into scenes. A scene is a location, but not in films in a filmic sense. It's in an animation sense. A location can be the camera is pointing towards one person and showing his background, and then it switches and points towards another person and showing their background. Those are two different scenes in animation. In film, that's the same scene. It's the same scene. But for animators, those are different scenes. They're even handled by different people normally, and they're just simply brought together, but they're treated as different scenes. So for an animator, sometimes you find a scene can last 3 seconds to 10 seconds. Typically, they don't last for long because of the way in which we look at things. Once the imagery changes in front of you, like the foreground and the background, that's a new scene. Okay, so divide the whole thing into scenes. Now you can have long scenes, like the way I'm talking to you here. If this was an animation and I'm talking to you forever, the way I'm talking, and the background's the same and I'm the same, this is one scene. It's a very long scene. But in animation, typically, you don't need to animate someone doing what I'm doing. This is a misuse of animation. You don't need animation to have someone talk and talk and talk like this. You see, animation comes in when you can exaggerate ideas, stories, you change scenes, you increase tempo, and things like that. So this is a violation. Okay, so let's yeah, welcome to this session, Nelly. We'll finish with this one and then we'll move on to yours. This is only half an hour, so I think we probably have 10 minutes left. Okay, so when you've done the storyboard, then we move on to the audio. We do a sheet that we call the voice script, which is only for the actors to read out what's going on. So I'm going to explain that when it comes. And then once we're done with that, we move on to the animatic. But when we do the audio, it involves the recording of the voices, it involves the selection of the sound effects, and it involves the selection of the background music for the whole thing. And then we move to the animatic. Okay? So technically, the last step would be the backgrounds. We determine the backgrounds so that we can have that included in the animatic. So we do the backgrounds. So that now is the pre-production. Today, I expect that we should be done with the characters. Characters are a big step, so we have to do that, and once it's done, it's good. And the biggest step is the storyboard. So we have to do the storyboard by next week. We do. And then after that comes the sound. Sound is also quite hectic. Even if we were to finish that in a week, we'll have done well. That will be the following week. And then will come now the week after that, the animatic. We might say we do the background first. We might say this. And then we move to the following week, the animatic. Okay? So let me count the weeks. So next week, we're saying we do the storyboard. That's 1 week. Then we do the audio. And there are 3 components of audio. The main one being the voices, but also the selection of sound effects and the soundtrack. So that's week the next. Then the third week from today. The third week would be after the audio, we do the backgrounds, then we do the animatic, and you see those are 4 weeks. So that means in August, by the end of August, we have our animatic. That's what that means. All right. If you want to see what the flow is about, that's what we're saying. So that starting in September, we're in production. And that's a whole different sequence of things. Again, 7 things that we do. But when we get into production, we're going to be a team of, we'll be like 5 people plus you and me. So it'll be a total of 7 in that team. Now, what we do in pre-production is the responsibility of the director of animation. So you're assisting me now to produce these items. I'm the director and you're the assistant to the director. You're helping me to think through these things and produce them. So you become the assistant. Okay? Once we get into production, you'll be given a production role. You'll be given, for example, a few characters. You'll be given the job of animating those characters through the various milestones. We'll discuss those milestones until now it's done. The outcome of production is animation. You're going to have animation after that. Then we're going to post-production. Okay? So that's coming. But this is key, and I need us to try to maintain the times that I gave. All right? So that's the thing. In terms of expectation by today, you should have your characters done. If you don't have your characters done, you can tell me when you have them done and what's causing a problem in terms of the characters. So now I'll ask you to demonstrate or to show me something. If you have any characters that you've done, Nelly, maybe you can show me that. I mean, Purity, if you can show me that, it'll be good.
Okay, hi again.
Yeah.
So,
Mm.
yeah.
You can share. Mm.
First, I decided to create a character sheet. No, I mean a character reference table for the first 3 characters I was to work on.
Okay.
So I made the references and then I went into DAS 3D. I don't know if it's me who still doesn't have a lot of experience with it.
Sure. That's okay.
Yeah,
I'm
yeah,
saying
but
yes, yes.
on working with it kind of have a lot of like limited resources for like working with everything.
Yeah.
So if you're downloading like free assets, you only get things that are not directly related to what you want. And
Yes.
if you try to like download from an outside source,
Yes.
they're also kind of, how do I put it?
Yeah.
They're not that open with what they're sharing. Like for example, you're going to find something, they're giving it to you for free,
Sure.
but they're like, you're only going to get this if you're in premium, or if you're not in premium, you're going to
Mhm.
give it to you after 3 hours, or if you're like downloading it for like 3 hours. So I've been downloading an asset over here, it's still not even done, so I don't know.
Okay.
I tried working with what I had.
Mm.
And there's also like you're going to find a character, but then the outfits they're just not it. They just give you like for example a shirt
Okay.
and then a short, and you have to use the same asset, the same clothing items for each and every character you make.
Okay.
Because like if they're giving you like for example a Genesis character
Mm.
that's a female,
Sure.
the outfits, even if they're like 10 outfits, you
Yes.
can't use those 10 different outfits for that one Genesis character.
Oh, I
So
see.
it's like the Genesis character only
Yes.
dresses Genesis outfits. And
Uh-huh.
you're going to find like Genesis outfits in the free asset, there's only like one outfit only.
Okay.
So it will become like really, I don't know.
No, no,
So for that,
good. I want to make a comment on that. If
mhm,
you've seen, for example, a wardrobe that you need, it could be, as you say, an outfit, it could be shoes, it could be different character versions of the same character, whatever it is you find, any assets you find that cost money, get the link, okay, develop a table, the character name, put the link, and put the cost so that I can include that in the budget. You see, because we're charging the client for these things. So that if the client will give us a deposit. When they give us the deposit, we're able to now purchase all these things that you require. Make sure the link is comprehensive. Don't be shy of stuff because it's not your money or my money that's being used to buy this. It's for the client. The client wants this. So we're now developing a hit list of items we need. So develop it fully, um, put the link and everything, and then send it to me as soon as possible. That list will be good even as you're working with what you have is okay. We only need the 3D characters for this production as a reference. Okay, so we're using that in itself as because we're rotoscoping. But we need an accurate reference if we're to finish in time, So the more detailed the reference, the more likely we can finish in time. So it's good that you're saying what you're saying. I want you now to include this list as an urgent thing with the link and the cost so that I can include it in the budget to the client. Okay.
I didn't know that was an option.
Yeah,
It's
no, it's an
okay.
option. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
So
normally, I'll tell you, when we're in production, like in these jobs, you see, when you're a student, the cost is always one thing for free. But when you're now in the workplace, someone's paying. So that that is important. So you'll always do it this way. Even in the next job, you'll do the same thing. Okay, go ahead. Mhm.
okay. Yeah, I'll try to look through because for most of those that are bought that are being offered there, a lot of them are not African-ish, and I would assume you are going for that African look. Or
Yes,
yeah.
yes. In fact, now you've brought up another important thing. The reason why we're using this method of rotoscoping is because of exactly what you said. That we'll find a lot of assets that maybe have everything that we need, except they don't look African. No problem. Since we're drawing on top, the brief that the animators will have is to Africanize the character. So if it's a Japanese looking character with big eyes, we just Africanize it based on our character model. All we need is the pose, the clothing, and the movement. That's all. And then the rest we Africanize in our drawing. So it's good you've said it because it gives a chance for us to discuss that. That's a very important statement. Mm. Yeah.
You've mentioned
Mhm.
the rotoscoping part, like where
Yes,
we like rotoscope the movement.
sure.
Does that mean we are also going to like do part of the animation with DAS 3 or another different software?
The animation will be done in PBS Max or Blender. But what DAS is doing is giving us the model. DAS is being used as a character creator for us. If we had to model the character in Blender or in, let's say, PBS Max, that will take a lot of time. So we need a software where, on one hand, we have a big library from where we choose preset characters, pre-designed characters. So that's one. And we can configure them slightly, in terms of height, in terms of, expressions and things like those. But the character actually is going to be taken from DAS into 3ds Max, where we'll do the animation. So 3ds Max is very good for animating and framing a shot. So framing the shot and animating the character, like in the story context, Blender and 3ds Max are very good. So we'll use it for that. That's our workflow. Then once we render out from there, we go into the rotoscoping. And the rotoscoping is to, as you pointed out, to translate you can say, um, foreign character into something that is relevant to our story. So it contextualizes the character for our story. That's why we're rotoscoping. It's not so much, so we benefit in some ways. We get the information in a way that is continuous, consistent, because if there's a pattern on the clothing, we draw it by tracing. It maintains its position in terms of the lines of flow. So that's kind of nice. Another nice thing is that the movements can be realistic. If you're using motion capture data from, let's say, Mixamo, we're going to use that. So the movements are realistic. So that's kind of nice. But the main thing is the issue of contextualization. We've got to make these African characters. So, and it's not just African looking characters, African behaving characters, so that Africans recognize them and the audience relates to them. That's the main thing. So the animators will come in and Africanize the behavior. Okay, so that's what we're doing, and that's why we're introducing rotoscoping. Yeah.
Okay. So does that mean in the whole creation, that stage in DAS 3, is that the point where we can do
Mhm.
most of the exaggeration to like bring out silhouettes of the characters? Like, is it okay to exaggerate features when you're adjusting them in DAS 3?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, I would encourage that, yeah, for sure. Because, yes, you know, in the big picture of things, animation is only justifiable in doing anything when we exaggerate. If by exaggerating we can bring out the story, then yes. And how to think when you're thinking of exaggerating purity is to think or ask yourself, like, for example, if you're trying to express fear and you want to express it by making somebody go like this. See, it's exaggerated, but people don't get scared like that. But you want to do that. Then when you do that expression, you want to make the mouth wider, and you want to make the shaking more, and you want to do all this trembling or whatever you want to do. So the whole thing becomes intense. That's what we mean by exaggeration. In real life, we can't do that. With animation, you can. So ask yourself, you're going from emotional beat to emotional beat on every panel on the storyboard. So um, yeah, make your characters lend themselves to their role. You might find a character who's very shy. How do you exaggerate them so that you bring out that shyness in terms of the character design? If you find a character who is angry all the time, how do you caricaturize them? You know, how do you design the character so that when you make them angry, they look dangerously angry? You see, um, so those exaggerations come out from the character design and then, of course, translate themselves to the actual movement. All right. So we're looking and moving away. You never do an animation in a way where you make your character look realistic. If you make your character so realistic, it's almost like an artist who comes and says, okay, I know how to draw portraits. Then you draw a portrait, but the portrait is so perfect in drawing and coloring proportions, it looks like a photo. Now, suddenly, your skills, which are so good, become the value of a passport size photo. In animation, the equivalent is to make your character behave like a human being. That's that's killing yourself. It's killing your career. No, you need to master how to say and answer this question. We're trying to speak emotionally. Now we want to speak emotionally with maximum impact. The maximum impact presents an opportunity for us to bring in the message of the client at the point of impact. So when you bring in the message at the point of impact, if the impact is high, the message will be well received because the attention at that instant of the audience is high. So you want maximum impact, get high attention, bring through the message, and at that instant, the client or the audience gets the message. If you talk to a client the way I've just talked, they understand that. Doesn't matter who the client is, they understand what you're saying. So they will agree, let's use animation because we can create these intense moments of maximum, let's say, attention, which means maximum impact. And at that instant, we pass the message. You see? So that's the science behind the whole thing. Now, you could argue because someone will be presenting something else. No, no, no. Let's use live action. Well, live action can't do this. They can't exaggerate the way we can. So you need to figure out how to exaggerate in the maximum way. Now, even when you're exaggerating, the worst thing, this is a mistake from an animation point of view. The mistake is this, where you exaggerate to a point where the audience realize this is fake. This is disbelief. It's just jokes. It's not serious. You see, that's a mistake. No, you exaggerate in such a way that the audience, just for that instance of time, believe that this is really possible or it's really happening. It's really something that could happen. Even though they know it's fantasy, they know that this story could be real. You see, at that instant, after which, when it passes, they can say, ah, but that was just a cartoon. Yeah. But at that instant, they believe that this was probable. And that's when you slip the message through. You see? So you have to exaggerate in a believable way. That's what we're saying. Now, the most believable way is to, first of all, have a believable story, which in itself lends itself to exaggeration. The story lends itself to that. Then is to develop a short list that allows you to exaggerate moments. For example, if you want to put fear in people, make them like an ant on the ground, for example, and make everybody look like they're towering over them. You see. Now, suddenly, as the ant, you feel as if you could be stepped on. It looks dangerous and everything. So it's already created a shot that looks dangerous. Okay. Now, within that context, exaggerate to bring out the fear, if that's what you want to bring out. Now, you use all these visual devices to bring out fear. You have the story, you have the character. Now, if you've designed this character, if this character, in many instances along the way, is being subjected to fear, maybe it's the hero and is being scared a lot, then you want to design a character that can express fear. How is fear expressed? Oftentimes, we look at people's eyes. You can tell by looking at someone's eyes that this person is scared. Okay, so if that's the case, then let the eyes be the ones that we can see clearly, so that the fear can be seen through the eyes. But it's not always in the eyes. It can also be in the posture. It can also be in In terms of the visual design of the character, it can be in their expression of the face. So you just decide. So when you're designing the character, you want to design the character to fit the part. Then, when you're doing the animation, you want to look for those moments where you can exaggerate in a convincing way. Everything else is normal. Suddenly, you exaggerate, and then it goes back to normal. Then suddenly, it goes back again to exaggeration, like that. And if you do it in a way that's well timed, then people will feel this is believable. And these things which are happening can happen. You see, and then that is great because you've created those moments where we can slip the message through. Okay, so that's the science behind this whole thing, just to understand the logic. Yeah. Mhm. Yeah, you're still there?
Yes, I am.
Okay. Yeah. So it's good what you're saying and doing. Just think the way I'm thinking. Remember, animation is not about art. It's also not about um, crafting 3D models and all that. It's more about communicating messages like stories using movement. It's more about that. So that's where we need to spend our time. We ask ourselves what messages, what movement, and then we go with it. Um, but of course, you need assets. So these assets simply need to be assets that can facilitate movement and also carry the message. So you're choosing according to assets when you're creating them. This asset can carry the message best, and this one can be animated in a way that will best carry the message again or move the story. You see, when you talk to myself or even to the crew or even to the client, the way I'm talking, even though I'm breaking it down in the way in a technical way, they will never argue against what I'm saying. Yeah, because it's very well aligned to delivering the message. Once your movement, any decision you make is aligned to maximizing or optimizing the message, the client will never quarrel with you. Anyone in the crew who may have a problem with what you're saying, like they might fundamentally disagree with it, if it's aligned to the message, they will not disagree with it. They'll say yours is an option. All they have is another option. You see. So it's that alignment that gives you relevance every step of the way. Even when I'm working with you, I'm really trying to get you to align or learn the importance of aligning things constructively. Okay, we start with, as we said, with the message, the brief. Then we move to, you can argue the story. Then we move to the script. All these things are introducing new factors, like the script introduces dialogue. Then we move now to the visual expression of the story. In all these things we're introducing, they must be aligned to the original message. See, that's that's the exercise. That's really what this is all about. Yeah. Okay. Go ahead. Just keep talking. Don't mind.
Okay, so I'll share one of the characters I did before I realized the things I realized.
Okay.
Okay. Can you see the screen?
Yes, we can.
Okay.
Mm. We didn't see. That was a very small image. Were you going to increase the size?
I'm trying to open it up still. A
Oh, I see.
minute.
Okay. So just a small comment. When you present, like you want us to see an image, it's good to put it on a white sheet or black background, but let's say white, so that there's just the character there, because that's the standard practice. And when you remove the background, we can just look at the character without it being influenced by the background. Um, there's an argument that can be made. It's good to show it in the context of the background. Yeah, that's an argument. But we need to really study that character. So it's good to have it just on its own with a white background. We can agree on that. And there'll be 12. So you're opening it now.
Can you see it now?
Yes, I can. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Yeah. My first reaction to this one is it's perfect. She looks, first of all, she looks, let's say, like Generation Z. She looks young. At the same time, she looks African. I like that. She looks like fit, so she's good for the part. So the hero of this story is actually the hero. Hero is a girl, let's say between the age of 21 and 24. This is her age. Let's say 24 to be safe. But that's the hero in the whole series. I'll explain more about it. But this looks like her. It looks like her. I even like the clothing because the clothing looks young. She doesn't look old. She doesn't look too young. So everything about her seems perfect. So the background, you can just make it white. So that's good. She's barefoot, which is okay, but you might want to just give her shoes. Look, now the story is about chokoras. So Shiro is a chokora. Her brothers are chokoras. Her father is a chokora. So it's a story about chokoras. But so being barefoot is not bad. I think it's possible, yeah. You can have some people. I mean, we can play around with the idea. So you can be barefoot, it's okay. But just know that they're chokoras.
But it was just for lack of the resources, the thing I said earlier. There wasn't any.
Yeah, that's good. You explained it very well, so I understand.
Okay. That's the only character I was able to come up with. But for now, I had a reference board for what I was trying to go for.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So what you're saying is that you think you'll have success in getting the other characters.
The issue is just mostly we can say the clothing, the wardrobe,
Yeah.
and then the hair type of kind of issue.
Okay. Fair enough. Yeah. So the audience we're targeting, the personas, are Generation Z, but from the middle class. That's the main persona. But this is a story of chokoras. So they have to be convincingly chokoras, but targeting a middle class audience of Generation Z and also Alpha. In other words, chokoras are not going to watch it. You know what I mean? So it's interesting kind of dynamic, but that's the situation we're in. Okay. Now, do you think this was supposed to be finished by today? All 12 characters? The main characters are four. In fact, yeah, the main characters are the protagonist, that's Shiro, and her four, yeah, her three, are they three? She has two brothers. There's Njoro and Kolo and Shiro. So there are three siblings. Those are the main characters. But then the other main character is the antagonist. The antagonist is Kanjo. There's someone there called Mr. Munga, but he's just representing the authorities. But he has other people around him who are featured characters. But Mr. Munga is the ultimate bad guy. So those four main are the main characters. Secondary characters would be Juma, the father of Shiro. Is a secondary character. He's introduced in the first episode. And the authorities may have a few characters there who are featuring characters. But there are ants in the story. Have you read the story? Have you seen about the ants, Purity?
Yes, I did. The three main ones.
Exactly. So those are
Yeah.
also main characters. Yeah. So anyway, to get a sense now of the scope, we have human characters are four main characters. I would say the supporting characters are the ants. They don't last the whole episode. So the ants, the three characters you saw, those are supporting characters. Juma, the father who comes in and out every now and then, those are now the four in total. So Juma and the three ants. And then the featured characters are mainly the authorities. And any other background people that might have, I don't know. but definitely the authorities because they come as a gang. Yeah. Okay. You have anything else to show?
Oh yeah. I had the question, a
Yeah.
question about these ants. Like, how are you planning to like bring them to life in the animation? Is it like direct drawing and animating, or?
Yeah. We're going to first of all we'll take ants like like you watched a bug's life. Right?
Yeah.
They'll be standing like humans, on two legs, and then they'll have hands. So we'll apply human movements to them. It's just that the body will be that of an ant, and then we'll trace them. It's the same thing, only that the ants will be standing on their two legs and walking and talking like that, like a bug's life.
Okay. I did have a question about the script.
Yeah, go ahead.
Uh,
Yeah.
on like reading, we
Mm.
kind of how do I put it?
Yes.
We are forced to like assume
Yes.
some events took place because of how the story is progressing.
Yeah.
Like you find, for example, we are
Yeah.
talking about Kolo and his family, like they're talking about what they're planning to do
Yes.
and how they're planning to bring in the community to like take part in their plan.
Yes.
And then after that, it skips. And then we are introduced to Mr. Munga, who already found out about what was happening.
Yes.
So like, and then also it's like when he comes in, he already has an idea
Yeah.
that Collins and his family are
Yes.
already putting out the plan and including the whole of the community.
Yeah.
Like there's no place ever where we're like
Yes.
shown the
Yes.
community taking part or being brought into the story.
Yes. Yes. That's a good observation. I like that. Yeah. You're right about all that. So the story has another version coming up. So in this version that's coming, the community are not there. What's going to happen in the story is purely between the siblings, at most their father. But this episode is about Joro and Kolo discovering from the ants about how to manage waste disposal systems. Um, yeah. Hi, Alfan. Is it 7:30 already? Okay.
Yes,
Let's say we start at 8 because this meeting is going to go on until 8. We've extended, I've seen.
no worries.
Okay. Yeah. So what we're saying is that it's going to be about the discovery, first of all, from the ants of the two boys. Kolo is the youngest. Kolo. Was in Joro. Joro is the youngest now. And then Kolo is the middle guy. He's slightly older than Joro.
In
And then
this story, in
in
this new story.
the news, yeah, it's the same story but slightly different. So you're saying in the current one, the youngest is who? Kolo.
Kolo, yes.
Okay. Okay, let's say if it's Kolo for the sake of our discussion. Kolo is the youngest. He's the one who he's a joker, he's a prankster. The prankster part is new, but he likes pranking people. So in the story, it's Joro then, who is older, who is in touch with Mother Nature. He can understand Mother Nature. So he thinks a lot, he's reflective. So when he sees the ants, he's the one who can read and talk to ants. He actually talks to them. But nobody else can see that. So he's the one who gets these revelations from nature. And just by by observing and speaking to Mother Nature. In this case, it's the ants. So ants give him the method, and then he brings the method to, let's say, his brother Joro, to Kolo, his younger brother. And when he brings it to him, because of the age of Kolo, he just accepts. His younger brother accepts the method. He says it's good, let's do it. So they craft the plan with him. But they have to convince their sister. But their sister is someone who's in another space. She's into other things in her life. And she's very emotional. But at the same time, she's feeling like she has to mature into a woman because her mom's not around and she has the family together. She's got all those conflicts going on in her life. So when they try and convince her, it takes up the episode because she's not convinced but that what these guys are talking to ants. Now they're coming with something that is being suggested from ants. It just sounds insane to her. It doesn't seem like she should listen to them. So they disagree. And the episode goes about trying to persuade her, and it's back and forth with her. Till finally she agrees. She agrees. And so there's some drama around that. But when they agree, They go home, and the father comes home, and the father expects that they're chokoras, that they've been begging, they've been eating rubbish, and they now have something, and they should have sold it and have some money. That's what the father expects. Him, he's done that. When he sees they've been like joking, with ants and other things, other stories, he's not happy. That's how the story now goes. So the father represents Generation X. These children represent Generation Z. Generation Z is troubled because the father is not listening to them. So this is one of the complaints. He's not listening. The father is disturbed because these children are behaving poorly. They're not behaving normally. I mean, they need to behave in a way that they can survive. So he's not happy with them. Doesn't even want to listen anymore. This is the kind of disconnect that's there. So the father introduces the disconnect, and that's how the scene ends. It ends with the disconnect so that the audience knows in general that the children don't agree with the father doesn't agree with the children. There's a generational gap. Although the father is feeding them, he's looking after them, he's explaining to them why they're chokoras and about their mother and all these things. You see, that's how the story ends. But when the story is ending, there's some elements of danger coming through from Mr. Munga, who is listening to what they are saying. But Mr. Munga has his own plans. We don't know what the audience don't know what the plan is. They don't even fully understand what the danger is, but they know there's danger here. And we bring it out in the visuals and the music. But it's when Mr. Munga arrives on the scene with his authorities. So that's how it ends. So the story is changing, and so the community involvement will come in the next episode, not this one. And it will be with the immediate neighbors. Before it becomes with Nyumba Kumi. Nyumba Kumi is the neighborhood altogether. Everyone lives around this dump. But now there's no community. There's no community. It's just the elements, the people who I've described to you now. Okay, so but I'll send you the written version once it's ready. Okay.
Please, okay.
So
You also said you'd create now
yeah, the Google Drive. I'll do that.
a Google Drive and then the reference board from your own point of view, I think.
Yes, I'll give you some references
Okay.
from the writer's even point of view, so that you can use that to develop your short film. Yeah. Let's say by Saturday, just so that I can organize it. But I'll do that by Saturday. So okay, so I think this is good. When you in the task book, that is stage 4, but you need to now progress the stage. Let's say I think it's maybe task 5. Task 5 is the one of the storyboard. You need to progress to the storyboard. So if you can do that, then that will be very good. By then, you should have gotten the revised story, the script, so that you can use that for visualizing the storyboard. Okay? But the characters that you're doing right now, you carry on with those ones. In the best way you can, of course, we need to purchase some assets, so we'll purchase them. But for now, do what you can with the free ones as far as you can. As long as you have the characters, the main ones and the supporting ones, you've done well. The other characters, you can have them. We're going to redraw them. So just have them. It's not so sensitive, but the main ones are quite sensitive. If you can finish characters and start on your storyboard with the shots, excellent. But by then I'll have given you the script so that you can use that now for the storyboard. You all right with that?
Yeah, I'm fine with it.
Okay. So any other thing you want to add on what we're talking about?
Right now, no, because I'm seeing
Yeah,
there will be some changes that will be coming. So,
that's
yeah, I don't have questions as of now.
okay. So let's move to your IBL issue. Have you been filling out your IBL form?
Uh, okay, so here's the thing.
Okay, but you'll do that, right?
Really, mostly about the scope of work and the introductory part of the whole project. Now, the second week, the part where you said I'm supposed to, no, I was supposed to do the script, but then you later came and said we are not doing the script part, so I put it aside.
Yeah.
So I think should I now move the character part to like the second week or?
Yeah, you can. But it's also valid to say if you've been busy doing things like installing DAS, learning how to use DAS. That's a valid way of occupying yourself in the second week.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay.
Yeah. Then the output can be the third week in terms of now the characters that you've produced. And even if you don't have all of them, like now you have one with a few other references, all these revelations, like produce that table I told you, because you can produce the table based on what you're seeing, because it's just what you see. That can be an output for week 2. So that week 3, you can produce your characters in a not complete way. You know they're not complete, but at least they're there. You can use them. And what we'll aim for is to complete them when we purchase the assets. So have your not complete actors in the roughest form, at least by end of week 3. So the research and all the finding of information that you found is all legitimate for your IBL for week 2. Okay? So write it down in a way that shows what you're learning. The way you're talking is fine because you're learning stuff and you're explaining it. So the way you're explaining, because it's a learning exercise, the IBL. So you want to document it in a way that reveals what you're learning. Okay? All right. Okay, so if that's okay, then I'm not sure if you're talking,
Huh?
but yes, go ahead.
I'm saying, yeah, I've understood. Thank you.
All right. So then that is good. Just make sure you fill it in the way we're discussing, and then when you're done, like um, when you're ready to send it to me, you can send. I need it as a PDF. Then I will fill in my part of it. You can send it like after 4 weeks, and then I'll send it back, and then after 4 weeks again. After 8 weeks, then we're going to do an assessment. Okay, so that will be your internship.
Okay.
All right. Okay, thanks a lot, Purity. I'm happy with that.
Thank you.
Yes, I see that Nelly is logged off. So let me ask her to come back. But thanks for coming. We'll meet again. I'll put this video up, but we'll meet again next week on Thursday.
Okay.
Thanks. Bye.